G'day guys, back to the Outer Circle, and today we're going to talk about, well, in the previous video we did in the Getting Started in the Horus Heresy, we talked about planning out your Legion wisely. Today we're going to talk about planning it out, well, unwisely. So this was sort of said as a joke by one of the people who commented on the channel earlier today, and I thought about it and I went, actually, it's not so much of a joke, it's kind of what does happen, because I spoke about the sort of things people should be looking towards and building up their force. I haven't really gone in depth about the things to not do. So that's really what I'll be looking at today. So I did point out things like, hey, the Kratos assault tank, that's not something you want to be buying straight away. Now, people always like to pipe in and say weird lines like, hey, I really like painting and yada yada, so I bought one. So, fine, it's not targeted at that sort of person. It's not targeted at a person who only is interested in the hobby aspect, or they don't care about when they're going to get their army on the tabletop. They just want to play games, right? It's targeted at the people who are like, hey, I'm buying into this game because I want to play games as quickly as possible. And we want to create an atmosphere where they can build a viable army as easily and cheaply as possible, rather than going down the rabbit hole of, oh, but what about this, what about this, what about this? So, with that in mind, the first thing I'm going to look at is right on this page here. You'll see that you can buy these pre-order bundles like the Legion Mark 6 Tactical Support Squad. And it'll give you a bunch of special weapons and all of those troops that go with it, same as the Mark 6 Heavy Support Squad. The Mark 6 Heavy Support Squad is the one we'll look at first, and then we'll look at the Mark 3 Tactical Squad. So the Mark 6 Heavy Support Squad, as you can see by this picture here, the arms are included with the weaponry. That's because the regular tactical marine arms do not work with these weapons. And you could cut and modify and repose the weapons, and I'm sure you could make it work. But you have to keep this in mind, because if you want to do something like buy Mark 3 or Mark 4 power armor for your army, well, the heavy weapons are no good to you. You sort of have to go down the route of going to Forge World and getting them in resin, or buying plastic kits, but then you're stuck with Mark 6. Now, it's not to say there's anything wrong with Mark 6, but it doesn't appeal to everyone. And if someone goes out there and they think, hey, I'm going to collect an Iron Warriors army and I want all my guys to be in Mark 3 because they're a siege warfare force, and I want a bunch of heavy weapons to go on them because it's really fluffy and thematic for Iron Warriors, then they fall into the trap of buying the heavy weapons, which are designed to suit Mark 6 power armored Marines and don't match the arms of the Mark 3. Is it a big deal? For some it will be, yes. In general, probably not, but for some it will be, because it's quite an investment of money. I mean, this box here, in Australian dollars, 209, that's a lot of money for 20, that's what, $10 a model and 45 cents off the top of my head? That's a lot of money for what is essentially just regular troops in your army, one could almost say. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind, that if you're going down that route, you want to get heavy weapons and all that, make sure they actually suit the armor that you're looking at. And yeah, cool that they come with a little transfer sheet, but that's such a crappy transfer sheet. Just needs to be said, because it only suits 2 legions, so it's not really a selling point to me. But if you collect Imperial Fists or Sons of Horus, there's going to be so many of these going cheap on eBay and the internet that, hey, you'll be able to fill out a whole army with them in no time. So that's the first thing to talk about. The second is, okay, Legion dice, Legion transfers, all that kind of stuff. It's all good for getting started in the Horus Heresy. Fine. Apocalyptic Blast Marker makes me think Super Heavies, and Super Heavies are a really good transition point. So let's scoot on over to Forge World here, and let's just pull up the Lords of War. It will take a moment, because, you know, it's Forge World's website, and it's a little bit funky sometimes, and you've got to play with it a bit, but could just be Australian internet. And let's narrow this down to just tanks, because Primarchs, Stormbirds, it'll get confusing. So, if you buy one of these, well, for a start, you want, let's say, Marines. You're buying Marines. Then the Mechanicum stuff, obviously ignore it. Ignore the Arcurium Pattern Stormblade, because you can't use it. Ignore the Solar Auxilia Stormhammer, because you can't use it. So it really is just the Macedon, Felsion, Typhon, Cerberus, Fellblade, and Legion Glaive. They're the units that you should be looking at here. And they're a lot of money. Macedon, 789 really wasted dollars for that unit. So buying one of those straight out of the gate because you think it's cool with your box set, it's a lot of money that you're just throwing away because it's not very good on the tabletop. But it looks really cool. And I bring up what's good on the tabletop, not because we're in a competitive scene here. I bring it up because nobody wants to pick just units they're going to lose with repeatedly or spend a lot of points on for very little reward. Is one thing to pick these units because they're thematic and you know they're going to suck, but you're fine with it anyway. That's fine. That's informed choosing. But when you're picking a unit because, hey, it's this giant super heavy and it's got, tons of hull points and it looks like it's got all these guns, and then you realize that the Macedon packs less firepower than a Typhon, realistically, and you go, hang on, how does that make sense? Yeah, that's a mistake. Even when it comes to the other tanks, which are all relatively good. The Cerberus is better in this edition, which is nice. The Typhon's not an auto-include anymore. Fellblade's still really good, so is the Glaive, so is the Felchion. The Felchion's probably the worst of the super heavies, to be honest. But they're all cool tanks, but at $469, you can buy an awful lot. You could buy, two sets of... You could buy the Legion Tactical Support Squad and the Legion Heavy Support Squad and have two of each. That's a thing. Sure, fill your boots. Is it something you need in your army? You could build it because you just think it's cool and you want to paint it. Sure, go for it. But again, this is aimed at people who want to get their force on the tabletop and actually get some games under their belt. In which case, don't. Stay away from all of these vehicles. None of them are useful to you. Absolutely none of them. What you should be looking at is Rhinos, Predators, and Land Raiders, really. Sicarans, of course, they'll be out in plastic in a month or two. So get into those. Which brings me to another point, actually, thinking back to Legion Tactical Support Squad. So a Tactical Support Squad is not a line choice in the current rules. So a line unit is, you can essentially score with the unit. It can contest and score objectives. That's very, very important in the Horus Heresy, because most games revolve around objectives. There are very few pure kill points missions out there in the Horus Heresy, whether it's 1.0 or 2.0, because 2.0 so far has only repeated version 1's missions. So when you go to a unit like this, you think, oh, cool, it's a tactical squad and it's in troops. But it's really not, because without the line rule, it kind of sucks. I mean, I'm going to go and double check. I'm holding the Liber Traitoris in my hands here, but pretty damn sure that Tactical Support Squad doesn't have the line rule. Instead, it has the Support Squad rule, which, yes, page 48, I can confirm. So that means you can't just get, say, 2 tactical squads, fill out your compulsory troops, and then buy 4 tactical support squads, because they're not scoring. If you try and use them in your game and you lose your 2 tactical squads, that could mean you've lost all of the scoring in your army. That is a major negative downside of playing this force, and so therefore you don't want to bulk up on something like tactical support squads without putting forethought into what's actually going to do the objective capturing in your mission. Another great example of this, actually, I'll bring them up on Forge World. Let's pick a Legion, not all-terrains, pick something more out of the box. I'm going to pick... Thousand Suns are good. World Eaters. Okay, World Eaters. Because they're really cool and nobody talks about them enough. Okay. World Eaters, Rights of War. Page 217 in the Trader Book. There's a Right of War here called Berserker Assault. The effects are, all units composed entirely of models with the Legiones Astartes World Eaters rule in this detachment. Add plus 2 inches to the distance moved when running. That's cool. Cover the table very fast. All units composed entirely of models with the Legiones Astartes World Eaters gain a bonus of plus 2 to all charge rolls made for them. Very good. All units composed entirely of models with the Legiones Astartes World Eaters rule in a detachment using this Right of War gain a bonus of plus 1 to their leadership to a maximum of 10 when making pinning checks. Handy. There's a lot of pinning in this edition. Rampager squads may be taken as troops choices in this detachment using this Right of War. Perfect. That's what I was looking for. And secondly, it says Legion Predator squadrons may be taken as fast attack choices in detachment using this Rite of War. Now, there's obviously a bunch of limitations to the Rite of War, but that second last line was what I was looking for, and turns out World Eaters is a perfect example. Because it makes Rampagers troops. It does not make them line troops. Huge distinction in there to be made. So, Dark Angels have this problem too with some of their Rites of War. Multiple legions, in fact, do. They gain a unit, becomes a troops choice, or it might become the predominant troops choice in a force, and yet it's not scoring. So if you take 6 squads of Legion Rampagers as your primary troops choices, you've filled all 6 troop slots and you have 0 scoring. That's not good. Now, the previous edition of Horus Heresy just made it so that, hey, if you moved into the troops choice, hey, you automatically became scoring. Not this edition. It's a really big distinction to make, because it could absolutely cripple you in some games. So keep that in the back of your mind when, again, building an army unwisely. You would be doing that. You would go out and you would buy units thinking this is going to be really cool, this is going to be really helpful, and then you get it and you find out that you've just essentially wasted your points. So you need to think smart. If you're going to build an army like this, you can't just fill the troops choices with Legion Rampagers. You need to get some other form of line infantry into there that can score. And in the previous Horus Heresy, my rule of thumb was every 500 points you need a scoring unit. Obviously 2 for the first 1,000 points, and then 1 in every additional 500. Now that used to be easy because you could say 2 tactical squads, and a Terminator squad, for example, in 1500. Because Terminators used to be scoring, they had the implacable advance rule. That rule is gone, Terminators are no longer scoring. All of a sudden, you need to add more troops. And that's fine up to 3,000 points. At 3,000 points though, most armies will cap out on troops choices. They'll have run out. And when they run out of troops choices, all of a sudden it becomes, hang on a minute, how do I get more scoring into my army? You might only have 6 scoring units. And that, if you've got 6 10-man tactical squads, for example, at 3,000 points, you're probably going to lose 6 10-man tactical squads before the game is out. It is punishing in 3,000 points just how quickly Power Armor will die, especially in this edition. So keep that in the back of your mind at all times. Another thing to point out with this edition is, well, the sheer firepower you see out there. So Legion Tactical Support Squads, they are a bad choice. Very points poor compared to, say, Legion Heavy Support Squads. The Legion Heavy Support Squads here, they are cheaper. You can get 10 with las cannons for cheaper than you can buy 10 tactical support with melter guns. To me, that is a crucial rules oversight, a major screw up on behalf of Forge World, because las cannons just 4 times the range of melter guns. Hits harder than a melter gun unless you're at point blank range. If you're within 6 inches of the melter gun, okay, it's a little bit better against tanks as long as they don't have some anti-melter protection. Some do. Why would you do that, Forge World? Games Workshop, whoever wrote that, just poor. And people should take that into account when they're planning, is points values on things. Some things are just not good choices. They're not viable choices to take. And again, we're not trying to win all of our games here. I can't stress that point enough. It's not about what's competitive. It's about what can keep up with the armies around it. And you don't want it to devolve into 40k where it becomes this sort of rock, paper, scissors of, I have this beats that type mentality. But you also don't want to end up in a situation where every single thing in your army is, say, paper, and every single thing in their army is scissors, and you just gotta suck eggs because that's the way the rules are written and that's how you built your army. So the biggest thing to do, really, is write a bunch of lists. Before you even put models on the tabletop and start proxying, experimenting, trying to figure out how you want to build your force, build a list, write a list, try it out and see if it actually works. Because people often find that when they list hammer out a force, it fits into the points limit they're allocated, and yet it just doesn't perform the way they expect. So first and foremost, plan ahead. And with that, it will also help to plan your purchases out, because you'll find that units you think are really cool didn't make it into your list sometimes. Or units you thought were really overpowered you're going, you know what, I don't want to take that. I found that the person playing against me didn't like playing against that. Maybe I want to swap it out for something else in my army list, therefore I'm not going to go and buy one. These are all viable choices for you. Anyway, that's it from me. That's all in this episode of Getting Started in the Horus Heresy, and about what would be unwise to do. This is more off the cuff than any episode normally is. I don't script episodes as a rule, except for what broke the fans, because I need to refer back to dates and times and places and previous events and publication dates. Almost every video on the channel is just ad-libbed, but there is ad-lib and then there's ad-lib, and this is one of those where someone came up with a comment a few hours back and I thought, yeah, I really want to record that. So I went in here and I just made it up as I went. So not as structured as other Getting Started in the Horus Heresy videos, but it's a little fun content. Anyway, we'll get back on the schedule soon enough. I'm trying to smash out the Salamander's army that I bought in the box set. So 40 Tactical Marines, 2 HQs, the Spartan, the 10 Terminators, the Contemptor. I have completed 1 tactical squad, both HQs, the Spartan. Contemptor is pretty much built. 30 of the Marines are also built and base coated. One of those squads is only a few hours away from being complete. I've done most of the bases for that army already. They're all Zone Mortalis bases. So I should be able to finish the force inside of the 3 weeks I allocated myself, the same as the regular people in the community got given boxes. So that'll be fun. Putting up pictures, obviously, on Instagram especially. Our Instagram link is in the description below the video, as per other episodes. And apart from that, I've waffled enough, so I'll let you go. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.